What's on my mind this morning is obviously the incredible disappointment and the hurt and pain that is emanating throughout the African American community and beyond. I don't consider this just a George Floyd issue. I consider this an American issue. It's emblematic of what kind of nonsense has been taking place for far too long, and something needs to be done about it. In terms of what specifically needs to be done, a good start would be arresting the other three officers that were there. Two officers were laying on George Floyd's legs. It wasn't just one officer on his neck. It was two additional officers on his leg. As far as I'm concerned, they should be charged with third-degree murder. They should be arrested and charged. The officer that was standing lookout, basically, he was complicit in this crime. He definitely needs to be dealt with. There certainly needs to be reform. There needs to be legislation. I think, if we have to do our homework here, but last time I checked, I don't believe to kill an unarmed black man was labeled to be a hate crime when it takes place at the hands of a police officer. I'd like that explored. I'd like that, and I'd like that probed, because I think that's something that definitely needs to happen. And I think the governor of Minnesota took an incredible step in putting the Attorney General for Minnesota, Keith Ellison, in charge of this case at this particular moment in time. This is the kind of stuff that needs to be happening. By the way, Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, will be on First Take this morning. Later on, he will be interviewed by me, because I got a lot of questions for this man. This is the kind of stuff that needs to be addressed. And, the interesting part is, Greeny and Marcus, I've spoken to numerous folks that are obviously actors, actresses, athletes, etc. And a lot of folks are, even though people are being very outspoken at this particular moment in time, they've gotten to the point where they're almost tired of talking. They want to hear from white people who think like that police officer, who have this kind of mindset that black people are such a danger to them. They want to hear white folks explain and justify what has transpired. Obviously, there's a plethora. There's millions of white folks. We see some of them rioting and protesting. We've seen some of them speak out. Clearly, we're not looking at white folks and saying, it's you, as in it's all of you. But certainly when we look at things from a systemic perspective, there is no question that the power structure is run by white folks. The kind of actions, the egregious actions that have been taking place have been allowed and perpetrated by white folks, and little to nothing has been done when it comes to unarmed black men. Yet I'm watching a video just a month ago, Greeny, of a white man waving a machete at numerous police officers, and they stood around from a distance and allowed him to do that for 5 minutes. So a white man with a machete can swing at police officers and somehow, some way ends up getting arrested, but he's alive. But an unarmed black man, yet again, is dead. These are the kind of things that, whereas we don't justify looting and rioting and stuff like that, the bottom line is you can understand where the frustration, the ire, the despondency comes from, because we've seen far too many of these incidences take place throughout this nation's history, and something needs to be done about it. And I applaud everybody, black and white, who has spoken up and spoken out against this.
Marcus, you and I talked just briefly yesterday. What thoughts do you have today?
So many, G, but I think the most, I think the thing for me, man, is there's a sense and a known in the black community that these type of things have existed for a tremendous amount of time. And I think when we watch George Floyd be killed by these police officers, murderers, something broke in the black community that had already been inside broken. And now the world, this country, is starting to see all of those backroom conversations we have that sometimes put off as you're complaining and it's not that bad and we've come a long ways. Well, it's easy to say those type of things when you're not in that situation. I grew up in South Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I have met some of the best people I've known, white, black, Hispanic, in my own city and state. And I live in Texas, where it's a Hispanic population and white people that have helped me get to where I am. So this is not about good people. This is about the people that are complicit in dismissing the fact that this has been the Black experience in the United States of America for a tremendous amount of time. My mom used to be afraid because of my size and my Blackness that I would be mistreated in this country. I had to be raised to understand you better not raise your voice in certain situations. You better just comply and don't move and be careful every step you make in this country, in the country that I love and have benefited off of some of the systems that have been given to however you want to define it. My frustration lies in this is when I hear people say, well, what about Chicago? We don't condone Chicago. What about black on black crime, which is the biggest misnomer? We don't condone that, but we damn sure don't condone police officers who is there to protect and serve taking our lives. That is the experience. This is the cry. This is the thing that we've been saying for years. And I know we've seen it and went through the depictions. This is not the first time. It took them almost 2 months in Georgia to arrest men that followed a black man down the street and took his life. We saw George Zimmerman get off after a phone call to the police to come take care of the situation. This is the anger and the frustration that's coming out now. And I go back to what I was originally saying. When we watch George Floyd be choked out, and I don't care what it is about underlying conditions and all of that,